Hey guys, it's Alex, and today I'm here with a book review for All the Walls of Belfast by Sarah Carlson. This is a new release that just came out on March 12th of 2019, and I was recommended this book by Abby from Autumn of Pelennor, and I'm so glad she did because I absolutely loved this. This is a YA contemporary romance novel about two kids in Belfast. Danny is a Protestant boy growing up in Shankill who dreams of joining the army and leaving his abusive father for good. Fiona is an American girl who's visiting her former IRA father for the first time since she was 2. Told in dual perspectives, this book follows both of them as they deal with their family conflicts and build a relationship. I did really enjoy this book. It was so fascinating and so interesting, and one of those books where I feel like I gained something from having read it. The characters of Danny and Fiona were so well thought out and so well developed. They both felt fully rounded, a bit immature, but in the sense that they were kids. They were kids in this difficult situation, dealing with prejudices that came long before them that they grew up with in a way. And I really did enjoy that. One really interesting dynamic of this story was that they both come at those prejudices from different ways. Obviously, as a Protestant and a Catholic in Belfast, they do deal with those difficulties, but Danny has grown up in Belfast. Danny's grown up with these prejudices. They're very distinctly a part of his culture, whereas Fiona has been in America since she was 2. She's very Americanized, and she doesn't really understand the differences in their religion as much as he does. To her, it's more of a theoretical concept, that it's just religion to her, and she doesn't really care. But to Danny, it's very strictly a part of his culture. And I think it's very interesting how Sarah Carlson wrote the dichotomy of their perspectives, because that was something that I really did enjoy about this book. Like, at one point, Danny is using slurs, sometimes against Fiona, that she doesn't even understand, that she's never heard before, and I enjoyed that so much. And from the beginning, this book was very intense. I kind of went in expecting the consequences to be a little bit theoretical, like they're dealing with prejudice, but in a very modern day setting. But in this book, the violence is real and incredibly brutal. And I wasn't expecting that. It kind of came out of nowhere for me, but at the same time, it was dealt with almost painfully casually. And I did enjoy that. I thought it was incredibly intense, at times hard to read. It deals with a lot of difficult subjects, but in such an interesting and in such a good way. Like, I really enjoyed reading this, and I had a hard time putting it down. I read it in about a day, and I just got it out from the library right before I read it, and it was so worthwhile. Like, I haven't read a YA book that was this intense in a while, and this is exactly the kind of young adult literature that I really enjoy reading. This had my heart racing. I'm American and the author is American, so obviously I can't speak to the realism in this book and how the author deals with Irish culture, but just looking at it from a purely fictional standpoint, she dealt with culture so well in this book. As a reader, it was so interesting and so well developed, and she hit on everything. It felt incredibly real and incredibly fully fledged, and I enjoyed that so much. That was by far my favorite aspect of this book, was just how well she wrote the society, how well she wrote the family conflicts, and how even the ones who say they're not prejudiced or say not to worry because the troubles are over, they're still prejudiced, and sometimes in lesser ways, sometimes in more upfront ways, and it was just so well done. Like, if you enjoy reading about Irish culture, I would say, at least as an American, as someone who doesn't really know much about it, this book was so worthwhile in that regard and so interesting. Like, I love that aspect of this book. And I think if it did anything well, Sarah Carlson was amazing at the world building. Whether it was accurate, I don't know, but just within the realms of the fictional world of this book, it was wonderful. I don't want to say that I learned a lot from this book because I always hesitate to say that when it's not an Own Voices novel, but it did make me want to read more Irish fiction, especially contemporary Irish fiction that deal with the troubles, that deal with the prejudices today. And I do think I might look more into those books in the future. My number one issue with this book, the reason it got 4 stars instead of 5, was because it felt really fast. As much as I enjoyed Danny and Fiona's characters individually, as a relationship, I wasn't very invested. This book takes place over about 2 weeks, I believe. And it's hard for me to get invested into a relationship in just 2 weeks. It felt like it happened much too quickly, and I didn't really feel much of their chemistry. Like, as characters, yes, wonderful, but as a relationship, not so much, and I kind of disregarded that aspect of the book. It felt a little bit cutesy at times, and it just didn't feel like it worked within the context of the rest of the story. I probably would have enjoyed this a lot better if they'd just been friends instead, but it just didn't work because of the timing. There were also some conflicts in this book that felt like they were dealt with much too quickly. Danny obviously has a lot of issues having grown up Protestant in Ireland and falling in love with Fiona, whose father is a former member of the IRA, but it felt like he dealt with those issues much too quickly and they resolved very fast. It just felt like this book needed a lot more time to get into those conflicts. It's only about 250 pages, and I do feel like that was a detriment. I just wanted more time so that these issues could be fully developed and fully worked out because I felt like it was a wonderful story, a wonderful premise. It was just a little bit too short to be as deep as it really needed to be. For the issues in this book, I wish she'd taken another 100 pages or even another 50 pages just to deal with them a little bit longer because I do think this book needed that. But overall, I loved this. This was fantastic. This is exactly the kind of YA literature that I love to read. This is a romance, but it's a very issue-driven romance. There's a lot of violence in this book, there's a lot of abuse, and it is very hard to read. So if you're someone who likes lighter books, this definitely isn't for you. But if you like an issue-driven contemporary, I would highly recommend this because I absolutely adored it. It's a bit of a Romeo and Juliet story, and it does have a lot of themes of acceptance and getting over prejudice, but despite that, it's not preachy at all, and I love that. It's just a story of these two kids in this difficult situation who don't fully understand the situation, and they're mostly just in it for themselves. And I love that because it was so wonderfully done. The whole culture was written so well, and I was incredibly invested in these two characters. This had me very emotional. This had me tearing up, and I really, really love this book. So I highly recommend that you pick this up if it sounds like the kind of thing you would enjoy. Let me know down below if you read All the Walls of Belfast and what you thought of it if you did. I will try to find Abby's video down below where she talked about it and link that if I can, but this was fantastic and I highly recommend you pick this up. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and I will see y'all again soon.